The anime begins by showing us the ruins of what appears to have been a devastating war caused by a shadow dragon. In that moment, we see several heroes standing before it, and we are told that the shadow world is the worst calamity humanity has ever faced, as the world is being surrounded by a fog that brings contamination and destruction everywhere it passes. And the only way to put an end to all of this is by destroying the shadow world. At this point, we meet our main character by the name of Desire Herman, who states that it is time to put an end to this nightmare. Right away, the dragon begins preparing several attacks toward the group, but Desire uses a powerful spell to neutralize its attack, buying time for his companions to strike. They begin executing a series of combined attacks until finally the dragon can no longer withstand them and falls before their assault. However, before going down, the dragon declares that it refuses to die like this and leaves things at that. The group then erupts in celebration since they have defeated the dragon. A man named Raffaello announces that they have achieved victory by defeating the monster. However, his companion Donovan adds that he finds it strange that no completion message has appeared regarding the dragon mission being finished. Desire asks for a moment, and a man named Zod remarks that at least 150 million people tried to face this creature, and only they were the ones who managed to defeat it and walk away with their lives. Desire becomes deeply thoughtful, as over the course of all this time, many beloved people fell to the dragon. A woman named Priscilla tells them to calm down, as they have finally defeated Bromir Napolitan, and now all that remains is to enjoy the peace that will follow in the kingdom. Desire agrees with her, and after having saved the world, the group begins to feel more at ease. They then begin talking about the incredible abilities Desire possesses, as even Zod cannot believe that someone of Desire's rank was able to neutralize Napolitan's attacks, since not even he himself could channel that much power. Desire at this moment simply tells them he is a commoner who was blessed with that ability. Raffaello then changes the subject and asks what everyone plans to do once they return to their own lives. Most of them respond that they will pay tribute to those who fell in battle. Raffaello asks a girl known as Aegis the same question, but she simply decides to ignore him. At that exact moment, Desire has a memory of when he was at the academy and a girl he loved died in his arms. In that moment, his thoughts are interrupted when the dragon awakens once again. It begins generating an enormous pressure in the air around them. And one of them explains that a dragon's heart stores vast amounts of mana, so even if someone manages to defeat one, it can release massive bursts of its mana, which in simple terms means the dragon will self-destruct and wipe out the entire world. This causes the heroes to try using their spells, but they are completely useless against it. So the only thing left for them to do is brace themselves, as they know they are about to die at that very instant. Just as the explosion reaches him, Desire manages to close his eyes. But when he opens them again, he finds himself transported back to the day of the entrance ceremony at Hebrian Academy. Desire hears a professor named Brigitte welcoming everyone to the Academy's ceremony, which leaves him completely disoriented as he cannot understand what has just happened. Brigitte mentions that they will need to take an exam if they wish to enter the Academy, as very few will be chosen to fight against the Shadow World. Finally, Brigitte announces that she is very pleased that the year 3613 entrance examination has now begun at this very moment. This sends Desire into complete shock, as the great battle against Napolitan began in the year 3626, meaning he appears to have woken up several years before the entire battle took place, since Desire mentions that they spent 10 years fighting to try and defeat the Shadow World. A short while later, while Desire is reflecting outside, a girl arrives who we come to know as Raydoria von Dorich. She introduces herself to Desire and tells him she is a second-year student who will be acting as his tutor. As expected, Desire already knew her and notes to himself that she is a genius fire mage. All of this, of course, without the girl knowing that he already knows everyone in the place. After reviewing Desire's information, Raydoria realizes he is a commoner and mentions that no matter how talented he may be, they will likely place him in the beta group. Desire explains to us that despite many mages possessing great abilities, if they come from commoner backgrounds, they are assigned to the beta class, compared to nobles who are assigned to the alpha class. After this brief explanation, both of them head inside to take the exam. Desire does not seem surprised upon entering the building, and the girl notices this, so Desire simply tells her that he has been in this building before or one very similar to it. Just as both of them are walking down a hallway, a boy named Elzit rudely interrupts them. Desire recalls that this boy masters water magic, not to mention that he does not get along with Raidoria at all. And as expected, both of them immediately begin arguing with each other and start getting more and more agitated. Elzit suddenly calms himself and asks Desire about him, and upon reading that he is a commoner, he begins laughing at him. Before leaving, he tells Desire to give up, since even if he passes the exam, he will be assigned to the beta group. This infuriates Raidoria, who believes Desire will pass with ease. After saying these words, Elzit leaves the place. Over a loudspeaker, they also hear that it is time to take the exam, and Raidoria, very furious, tells Desire he must pass, as she refuses to let that arrogant boy mock them. While they walk to the waiting area, Desire thinks that everything he sees in the place is perfectly familiar to him, so upon arriving he wonders whether his beloved, who had passed away, might be there. Just at this moment, a girl appears who we come to know by the name of Romantica Iru. Desire in this instant feels motivated and thinks that if he has returned to the past, he will not allow tragedies to happen again. So the idea comes to him in that moment to rewrite the history of the world. Desire also cannot stop looking at the girl, and she becomes a little uncomfortable, so Desire calls her by her name before she has even told him what it is. The girl asks if perhaps they had known each other before or something like that. This causes Desire to become very nervous, and he quickly points out that it appears both of them have been placed in the same group for the exam. The girl, upon seeing this, wishes him good luck, and Desire reflects and reminds himself that she does not know him at this moment, but he knows he must do something so he never loses her again. Next, Raidoria explains to Desire that the exam consists of a race toward the Hirnst plane inside the novice-level Shadow World Zone. She tells him that despite being part of the Shadow World, it is very safe, as the Academy provides full security over it. At that precise moment, Elzit arrives and tells Desire it is impossible for him to pass, as apparently within this area participants are allowed to attack each other. He also introduces the girl he has brought with him, and we see that it is none other than Aegis Kingscrown herself, a magic knight. Desire recalls that she is a high-ranking ice knight who uses a vision magic that is impossible to interfere with, not to mention that she also masters the sword and was clearly the most loyal companion Desire ever had. Elzit then begins mocking Raidoria, which causes her to lose her temper entirely. Finally, Raidoria gives Desire some words of encouragement, and we see that the first group to take the exam is Desire's, so they cross through the portal and are teleported to the plains. The rules are then announced. Only the first 3 to reach the finish line will pass the exam. Additionally, they are allowed to use magic to try to hinder and hold back the other students. Desire in this moment wonders whether Aegis also has her memories, but immediately realizes she does not, since she simply called him by his name and said she saw him on the list. The girl also tells him that since he is a commoner and his physical abilities are low, she has no intention of attacking him. Right away, the race begins, and we see everyone taking off at great speed. Desire starts talking with Romantica, and she gets irritated as it seems like Desire is trying to get her attention. Suddenly, Desire pushes the girl to the side, as he had detected an incoming attack from another boy, who then attacks again and is blocked by Romantica's ability, who also counters his attack and finishes him off. On the other side, we see Aegis and the rest of her group continuing at great speed. Romantica thanks Desire and mentions that now they are even, and right away announces she will use an ability to move ahead of the others. On another side, the Academy staff comment that everything is going according to plan with the groups. They also find it amusing that the Magic Knight's own group also has a commoner like Desire in it. Back with the group, we see that Romantica's ability manages to reach Aegis and the other 2 students. However, the Magic Knight manages to cut through the wind with her sword and escape the attack, unlike the other 2 students who are both eliminated. Romantica tells Desire that now only the 3 of them remain, and she is not going to let him pass either, so she calmly asks him to withdraw from the competition. Desire very calmly tells her there is no reason for her to attack him at this moment, but the girl tells him she is being kind and wants to make him see reason so he does not end up hurt. But Desire refuses to withdraw while smiling at her, which causes the girl to get very angry, and she begins invoking several wind spells that leave Desire very surprised. Without thinking twice, she decides to attack with everything she has, and after launching the attack she walks away very calmly, thinking she has clearly defeated Desire. But Desire calls out to the girl without having received a single scratch. He also tells her he did not know she could launch all those spells at the same time. The girl at this moment becomes very nervous and tells him he must have dodged by luck. So she begins conjuring even more powerful spells and thinks she will not miss this time. However, upon launching the attacks, Desire manages to nullify her spells, since as you may recall, Desire possesses this ability. The girl is in shock, as she knows that for someone to have spell reversal ability, they must possess an enormous amount of power. Romantica cannot believe that a commoner nullified her attack and has far more power than she does, so she begins conjuring large amounts of spells, and all of them are dispelled by Desire's ability. Desire thinks to himself that she is one of the best students the Academy has this year. However, he knows that if she does not increase her power, history could repeat itself, so he wants her to become much stronger so she can defend herself. Using his reversal magic, he dispels all of her spells, and using a combination of fire and wind magic, he manages to defeat the girl, knowing this will motivate her to push herself to become far more powerful. We also discover that Desire can use different types of magic. Next, Desire manages to catch up to Aegis, and she clearly senses his presence, realizing he is not as weak as she had thought. She invokes many magic arrow spells. Desire uses his reversal magic and manages to take control of many of her magic arrows. Aegis realizes this, and with the few she still has available, she launches an attack at Desire. It grazes him slightly, and she is very surprised that he managed to dodge that attack at all. So she finally creates a new spell, thinking there will not be enough time for him to reverse her magic. However, Desire manages to reverse her magic, and after a small explosion as a distraction, he passes by her side at great speed, not before telling her she should not become obsessed with beating him. After saying these words, Desire finishes in first place, leaving the girl humiliated, and she thinks the three of them need to become far stronger to avoid the tragedies that lie ahead. In a change of scene, we see that the Academy Assembly is somewhat classist, as they mention that commoners must go to the beta group. However, the principal gives the floor to Brigitte, who points to Desire on her screen and says that an exception should be made and he should be placed in the alpha class. In a parallel scene, we see the students watching the results on a screen. Desire is not happy about being placed in the beta class and notices that Romantica looks a little frightened. A few hours later, we see the girl in class and discover that she was also placed in the beta class alongside Desire. She is completely disappointed, as the beta class facilities are in a state of disrepair. The girl keeps looking at Desire and wonders why he is in the same class as her, since after all he ended up defeating Aegis. Desire also notices she is looking at him, so he smiles, and the girl gets irritated since she hates being smiled at that way. At this moment, a memory of Desire is revealed when he spoke with Brigitte. She apologizes to him, as despite being part of the assembly, the nobles opposed her recommendation to place him in the Alpha group. Back in the present, Desire knows that just like him there must be others with exceptional talents, so he thinks he must awaken each one of them. A short while later we see Romantica looking a little sad in the cafeteria. At that moment a boy named Donta arrives, someone who made it into the Alpha class. He tells her he is looking for people to assist him, as he plans to join the Blue Moon group. He also explains that it is the best team in the academy and maintains the best of the Alpha class. So they have come to recruit her, since she has great ability and comes from the Eru family. However, in exchange he asks her to go on a date with him. The girl gets very nervous and tells him she cannot since they have literally just met, so it would be strange. But the boy, quite the romantic, tells her he fell in love with her at first sight and adds that he cannot believe a noble like her is in the beta class, so finally he tells her to think about it. And the boy hands her an object as a token of his sincerity and affection. After saying these words, the boy leaves the place. At this moment, Desire appears behind her and gives her a big scare. He tells her he has come with the same kind of proposal, inviting her to join a group he is forming. However, the girl very proudly tells him she would never choose a brand new group over the best of the Alpha class. This tells Desire she would respond this way, so he leaves her a note and adds that she should get rid of it after reading it. Desire then leaves, and the girl, after reading the note, is completely furious. On another side, just as Desire was walking down some hallways, he spots a boy named Pram Schneider. As he watches him from some seats, he thinks that when he knew him, he was one of the greatest swordsmen in the world, so he knows that this time around he could turn him into someone far more powerful. At that moment, his thoughts are interrupted when Romantica arrives at the place. The girl, a little flustered, tries to confront Desire, but he points outside and tells her that training is about to begin. At that moment, we see the boy pick up a very large sword, and Desire thinks he should not be doing that. The fight between Pram and an Alpha class student then begins. After exchanging several blows, we see that Pram at one point gains the upper hand, causing the opponent to get nervous. However, as expected, the opponent ends up defeating Pram, and despite winning the fight, he begins hitting Pram even after he is completely disarmed. So Desire intervenes, and after blocking the opponent's sword strike, the boy feels a little afraid upon seeing Desire's threatening look. So he prefers to leave, not before telling Desire he will not forget his face. A short while later, the group gathers to treat Desire's wound, and Pram apologizes to him, as it was because of him that Desire received the opponent's attack, not to mention they now have an enemy from the Alpha class. Desire tells him it is fine since he used magic to block the attack anyway and it did not hurt much. At this moment, because of how adorable Pram looks, Romantica makes a completely lovesick face, so hopefully Desire does something about that before someone steals his little companion away. After formally introducing themselves to the boy, we see that Pram gets very nervous around how clearly impressive Desire is. A short while later, before Desire and the girl say goodbye, Pram tells them he is very grateful for what they did for him, so he tells them that for anything they need, they can count on him. Desire accepts these words and they then say goodbye to the boy. Desire then addresses Romantica and asks what it was she wanted to talk to him about. They move to another location and the girl, very upset, asks him if anyone else knows what he wrote in the note. Desire tells her that only the professors know this, and then narrates that in the kingdom of Ralcha there was a special merchant who made a fortune with his business and ended up buying a noble title, since the merchant was also a commoner in reality. This title granted the surname Eru, and we discover that all of this comes from the girl's own family, as all of this happened when she was only 4 years old. So finally he tells the girl that despite her name carrying a noble title, in reality her blood comes from a commoner. And this is the main reason she was placed in the beta class. Despite belonging to the nobility, the girl confirms and knows that everything Desire said is true. Desire takes the opportunity and tells her to reject Donta's offer as he clearly despises commoners. So once again he invites her to join his group or something very bad might happen. The girl gets angry and tells him his threats of telling everyone will not work on her. But Desire responds that this is not his style of manipulation, since if she refuses, he will simply start the group with Pram. The girl imagines pleasant moments with the boy and gets even more upset. She also tells Desire he is a very suspicious person, since he knows things about her family and always smiles at her in a very strange way. However, after thinking about it for a few seconds, she ends up agreeing to join his group, but warns him that she will find out who he really is. So both of them reach an agreement in that moment. In a change of scene, we see that Pram has a dream in which his mother hands him a sword. The sword begins to crumble, and just at this moment the boy wakes up screaming. He looks at the sword his mother had given him in the dream. The next day, the group heads to Briget's office, as Desire wants to request the creation of a team. After drinking tea and eating several sweets, the professor asks him the reason he wants to form such a team. Desire very confidently tells her he wants to form it to win a tournament and be able to ascend to the Alpha class. Briget warns him that this could be extremely complicated. Desire responds that he knows, and right away the girl begins explaining why it is so difficult to change class, as it is a tournament in which teams of 3 to 6 participants from mixed alpha and beta groups compete. So by defeating their rivals and helping their team, they could ascend their rank, and this would help them qualify since if they win their rounds they will qualify to fight against the winners of other teams, and the best 9 will receive individual titles that allow them to ascend to the alpha class. After a long explanation on the topic, Briget mentions that to date no team has ever managed to ascend from class beta. So in simple terms she tells them it is impossible for this to happen with them. This makes Romantica very angry, as she thinks it is not fair given the enormous advantage the alpha class students have. However, Desire, very motivated, tells her it is a very good opportunity to prove the talent of the beta students to everyone, as this could make the teachers reconsider and show them that beta class students are also very talented. The teacher agrees with him and tells him that if they were to win, they could bring about a change in the corrupt system this school has. Finally, she adds that for the group to be formed all of them must agree, so she asks if after hearing all of this they are still willing to form it. A short while later, the group is standing beside an alpha class training room. Romantica is very impressed, but is completely disappointed when they arrive at another place that is completely abandoned and realize that is where they are going to train, as compared to what they saw before it is literally a dump. The group is interrupted when they suddenly begin seeing hundreds of rats in the place, leaving Pram and Romantica completely in shock. Desire is very calm compared to both of them, who are terrified of the rats. He tells them it is fine, they simply need to clean it, and we see that Romantica clings to Desire as if she were a frightened child. Desire tells them that after cleaning it the place will be very nice for training, but the girl clearly refuses this, since she would rather Desire find another place for them to get stronger. A short while later we see that because Pram had fainted from the fright, he wakes up on the stairway. He enters the training room again and is shocked to see that Desire and Romantica have left the place completely spotless, as it now looks like a brand new room. Also, the boy apologizes to them for not being able to help, and we can notice that Romantica is completely covered in dust. This causes the girl to get angry again, and Desire tells them they need to win this tournament. At this moment, a memory is revealed of when all of them agreed to form the group in front of the professor, and back in the present Romantica says she should not have agreed to join this group, since she knows all the Alpha class students are strong and they would have no chance of beating them. But despite feeling a little discouraged, she takes the motivation and tells them it is time to train. Right away the group heads to the training room, and after drawing a circle on the wall, Desire tells them to hit their abilities there. Romantica invokes several spells and they immediately impact the circle. Desire tells them they must hit each one in the center or the Alpha class will end up beating them. The girl thinks this is impossible, but Desire recalls that the Romantica of the future was able to do it thanks to her strong will. Desire teases her by saying that if she cannot do it, she will be stuck cleaning the place until graduation, which clearly causes the girl to get furious with frustration. Desire then hands her a ball and asks her to carry it to a circle he drew on the floor. Because she was going to throw it with her hands, Desire tells her she needs to concentrate and use her wind magic to carry it floating through the air. The girl at this moment does not know how to do it, but after an explanation from Desire, she manages to lift the ball into the air, leaving Desire very impressed, thinking she did it on the first try. The girl blushes because Desire praised her, so Desire tells her to keep practicing. He then goes to Pram and tells him it is his turn. Pram gets very excited and asks Desire to teach him everything he knows. However, Desire tells him there is nothing to teach him, as he knows Pram is already a master of the sword. This makes Pram feel sad, since he does not know that Desire knows he will become the greatest swordsman in the world. So Desire asks Pram why in the fight against the Alpha class student he picked up the large sword, since Desire knows the boy normally fights with a much lighter sword, because it clearly gives him far more speed in combat. The boy becomes a little uneasy and tells him he is unfortunately right. However, he initially refuses to say why, but Desire tells him he needs to mention the reason, as it could partly affect the team. Pram agrees to tell him, but they first need to go to another place to show him something. While both walk down a hallway, it is revealed that Romantica stayed behind training very happily with the new ability she learned. So Pram tells Desire that it seems he trusts her a lot, but Desire responds that he also trusts Pram just as much, causing the boy to feel extremely happy. Finally, we see both of them arrive at the boy's room, and Pram shows him the sword he had been dreaming about. Pram mentions that he never knew his father, and his mother was a commoner, and despite never knowing his father, the man turned out to be part of the nobility. So in simple terms, Pram was a child born outside of marriage, and the sword was the only inheritance his father ever left him. Desire is surprised to see it, as this is the sword he used in the future. He is amazed upon holding it, as it is clearly quite light. The boy also tells him he found out about it when he was 6 years old. At this moment, a brief memory is revealed of when the boy was much younger. He used the sword to train and was very happy and attached to it, thinking very excitedly that the next time he saw his father he would make him very proud. But one day his mother fell ill, and the woman asked him to never try to seek out or visit his father, as their social standings were completely different, and Pram had no choice but to accept his mother's request. Back in the present, Desire thinks that in this world a noble and a commoner having a child together is considered a disgrace. So the boy, now that he is a little older, realizes this and feels a little miserable about everything that has happened. Desire thinks that at this moment, if the boy had gone to find his father, he would have been killed. Suddenly, Pram mentions that the reason he wanted to enter the academy was really to find his father. But he knows there are many nobles who come from different countries, so finding him will be much more difficult than he thinks. He also mentions with tears in his eyes that when he arrived in the city, he decided to have the sword appraised to see if it had any value. But the person told him the sword was not worth anything and was not even worthy of a noble. This makes him angry even with his mother at the same time, as she is not there with him, and he ends up throwing the sword to the ground. Through all of this, he ends up saying he never plans to use that sword again. A couple of days later, we see the group training, and Desire seems very deep in thought about Pram. Romantica at this moment manages to move the ball to the circle Desire had told her about. However, it falls just outside, and after hearing a few words from Desire, she is completely disappointed. Desire suddenly moves very close to the girl, and she gets very nervous, so Desire at that moment remembers the object that Donta had given the girl and goes to Pram. Desire asks him for a moment to show him the sword again as he wants to analyze something, but is left in shock upon hearing that the boy ended up selling it. A couple of hours later, we see Pram and Desire head to the market to try to recover the sword. Desire has fond memories of the place, as in the past he liked to visit it. Pram then points out to Desire that the buyer of his sword is located in a very isolated alleyway. Just before entering the shop, Desire is disappointed to read that the man does not make any kind of returns, as he knows this could complicate the situation a bit when trying to recover Pram's sword. Upon entering the place, Desire notices the door is completely reinforced. So after knocking, they are received by a very rough guard and also by the buyer of the sword himself. He tells them he remembers Pram's face and unfortunately cannot return the sword to him. However, since he did not know Desire, Desire tells him he wants to buy it. The man tells him that despite being not worth much as a sword, it contains an object that nobles only give to their loved ones, and the protagonist at that moment recalls the object Donta had given Romantica. Pram is very astonished to hear that it really was something of value, the kind that nobles give to their loved ones, as this is a type of concealed sword case that contains something only an expert could unlock. Finally, Desire asks for the price, and the man, quite the swindler, responds with 40 silver coins. This makes Pram furious, as the man had originally appraised the sword for only 3 coins. But Desire calms the boy and tells him it is fine and without hesitating pays the money. After taking the sword, Desire uses a kind of vision magic and manages to see writing inside it, so, after figuring out how to draw out the sword, Desire gives instructions to the boy, who manages to unsheath a prized sword made from a material called blanchum, which is a material even harder than steel, and as light as a feather, making it a very high quality and pure weapon for a swordsman like him. Just as both of them are about to leave, the guard manages to block their way, as it appears the merchant has had a change of heart upon seeing the true value of the object. So he tells them the only way they will be allowed to leave is if they leave the sword behind. Desire responds that he has no intention of doing this, and reminds the man of his own words about not making returns or exchanges. This infuriates the merchant, who orders the guard to attack them. The guard attacks Desire with his sword, but it is dodged very easily due to his reflexes. Just at this moment, we see Pram step forward in front of Desire and tell him he will handle the enemy, as despite having said he would never use that sword again, he wants to do so now in order to defend Desire. Suddenly, we see the boy begin to emanate a kind of aura and right away attacks the man at full speed. The guard has no choice but to defend himself and states that Pram is so fast he cannot see his attacks. Just as the boy was about to land a blow on his neck, the guard kicks Pram in the stomach. At that moment, Desire gives him some words of encouragement and tells him he must trust in his father, as he knows that for a reason his father left him this treasure of such magnitude. This motivates Pram, who right away continues the fight against the man. The guard becomes overconfident, and just after exchanging several blows, the man thinks he is about to land a sword strike on the boy, but we see that Pram manages to split the guard's sword in two, finishing him off with the hilt of his own sword, causing him to fall completely unconscious to the ground. After leaving the place, both of them head to buy some skewers, and the boy begins to cry with happiness over some words Desire told him, as all this time he had felt very empty and now he has Desire, who already considers him a friend. So he thanks his mother for having guided him to where he is at this moment. In a change of scene, we can see that Romantica is training and manages to move the ball to the circle on the floor. She also becomes very happy after invoking several spells and launching them against the circle Desire had drawn on the wall. A short while later, the girl heads to the Alpha class area to talk with Donta. They sit down for dinner, and the girl ends up returning the object he had given her, as she does not accept joining his group since she now belongs to Desires. She tells Donta that Desire is a very good leader, as she has been learning many abilities thanks to him. She also asks if he stands by his words of despising commoners. After hearing an affirmative answer, the girl confesses to him that she herself was a commoner in the past. The man is in shock, but tells her to stop joking about things like that. However, Romantica tells him she is being serious, and that her group would not have made the face he just made. He feels very disappointed and tells her he would not have wasted his time inviting her to join his group. Finally, before Romantica leaves, she tells him her group plans to ascend to the Alpha class, so they are now enemies. The man, without thinking twice, tells her he plans to crush all of them, but the girl wisely tells him not to underestimate them and right away leaves the place, leaving him completely furious. At that moment, a memory of Donta is revealed from when he was just a child. Here we can see that the boy witnessed his parents being killed by other people, as some commoners who hated nobles ended up burning their homes to the ground. Several weeks later, we see that the qualifying tournament has finally arrived. They go on defeating the different groups and students they face one by one, including groups that had Alpha class students as well as Beta. They also gradually rise through the tournament rankings, making the group very happy. Desire also thinks they are getting close to the top positions, so they will need to be very serious from here on. In a parallel scene, we see Brigitte observing the fights from her office. She mentions that Desire has been fantastic, but now he will need to watch out for everyone as he has practically become the target of all. In a change of scene, we see the leader of the Alpha class and the Blue Moon group completely furious. He talks with his students and tells them they cannot allow a group like Desires to ascend to the Alpha class, as this could cause an upheaval in the academy and in the kingdom, since, as we mentioned, to this day no group has ever ascended class. The man known as Pugman gives them words of motivation and reminds them of what it means to be an Alpha student, warning them all that they will need to do whatever is necessary in the final round to eliminate Desire's group. As he is obsessed with the class divide in the academy, Pugman even asks Aegis if she can defeat Desire, recalling that she was the first to fight against him. The girl, somewhat serious, tells him she has a very good chance, which calms Pugman down right away. Finally, Pugman warns her that she must come back with a victory. At that moment, the girl thinks she has not forgotten what Desire did to her, as never before has anyone humiliated her like that, and he was the first to give her a real taste of defeat. So finally she thinks that this time she will fight with all her strength. A short while later, while the girl was walking through the hallways, she runs into Donta and another boy named Percival. The girl asks them if they disagree with her being their leader. But Donta, with a great deal of inner anger, asks her to please let him fight personally against Romantica, just as Percival wants to fight against Pram since, if you recall, he was the one who beat him in training. The girl thinks that despite being able to fight as a group, she ends up accepting their request. However, she warns them that her only order is not to touch Desire, as the girl plans to defeat him herself. In a change of scene, Desire arrives to find the group training. They ask him what the next training will be, but are surprised to hear that they should not train in any way. They then head to the library, and after handing them a pile of history books, Desire tells them that the final round is based on a historical event. As it appears, the Academy plans to recreate a historical incident, and the students must work to prevent it. This excites Pram, who thinks Desire is a complete genius. Romantica is a little reluctant to study various historical events, as Desire picked some seemingly at random. Upon hearing that the girl disagrees with him, Desire gives her a point and pretends they should study all the books. And after showing them hundreds of books, both of them prefer to stay only with the ones Desire gave them. While Desire watches the group studying, he thinks he already knows what the final test will be, as he clearly lived through all of this himself. Several hours later, we see that Pram for some reason cannot stop looking at Desire. Romantica notices what the boy is doing, so she starts teasing him by asking if the two of them have done things alone together, causing the boy to become completely flustered. It is not revealed to us whether the boy truly feels admiration for Desire or whether he is genuinely attracted to him. This causes both of them to start whispering and arguing between themselves, and the book they are holding ends up falling on Desire's head. Desire, with a very threatening smile, tells them they need to keep reading. A short while later, we see Aegis arrive to speak with Desire, and the atmosphere becomes a little intense. To break the ice, Desire mentions that it has been a long time since they last saw each other, and also tells her he thinks it was a good decision for her to join Blue Moon, as it seems perfectly fine to him that she is with the strongest group in the academy. The girl, not very convinced, tells him there may be someone stronger than Blue Moon and begins hinting at the talent he possesses. Finally, the girl tells him she has come to say something, but Desire, knowing her, responds that he knows she has come to declare war on him. Aegis tells him he seems to know a lot about her, and that last time she greatly underestimated him, but this time she plans to go all out and will not lose to his group. Desire looks very pleased, while thinking it is great that she will use him to push herself to become much stronger. Since, as you may recall, Desire's main objective upon returning several years to the past is to make all of his former companions much stronger, and thus avoid the many deaths and incidents that happened in the future. After recalling what he did with her to give her motivation, the girl leaves, and Desire thinks he is already eager to fight by her side. Several days later, the final round of the tournament has finally arrived. There are several portals and an enormous number of spectators. Desire tells the group it is normal to have this many people, as people come from everywhere due to the huge impact this event generates. After a long talk, we see that Desire is very happy, as he can see that his companions are not at all nervous. After a few words of encouragement, they step through and are welcomed with great enthusiasm by everyone. We can also see that all the portals have a group of students who made it to the finals. Several Blue Moon students think Desire looks very out of place. However, one of them warns them not to let their guard down, as if they underestimate him they could end up like Aegis did. A voice then begins explaining to each of them that they must figure out and prevent one of the historical incidents that will occur. However, it does not tell them which one, and they must figure it out themselves. It also explains that they can use magic and defensive attacks to eliminate their opponents. Finally, it adds that the 9 with the most points will receive the title of winners and will be allowed to ascend to the Alpha class if they are not already there. But that is clearly the case for Desire. Desire tells them that since they are in last place, they will need to resolve things quickly or finish off the rest of the students. Right away, we see the portals activate, and after several seconds of taking it in, the students enter immediately. They are teleported to different locations, and we notice they have been separated in a forest, so Desire thinks the first priority is to find his companions. But just at this moment, Desire detects an ice attack, and suddenly a girl appears before him. She is very confident and tells him it is his lucky day for running into her, as she plans to eliminate him right now. Without thinking twice, the girl invokes a spell that begins attacking Desire, but using fire magic he manages to block her attack. Desire at this moment is very intrigued by her, as she appears to be able to use 2 spells at the same time, and even tells her he expected nothing less from an alpha student like her. At that moment, the girl invokes wind magic and begins creating a tornado that gathers several crystals from the air, causing small cuts to appear on Desire's body. Very confident, she tells him a commoner like him will never master the magic she is using, so she asks for his last words, and Desire mockingly tells her she should aim for his chest. This makes the girl furious, as she knows her weak point is her poor aim. Desire also uses his reversal spell and manages to neutralize the girl's attack. He also tells her never to underestimate your opponent, as it is the most basic thing to know in combat, and right away begins creating a gigantic ice crystal and launches it at the girl. She tries to use a magic shield, but Desire splits his attack into several which end up impacting around the girl, eliminating her at that precise moment. In a change of scene, we see an alpha-class student walking when he is suddenly attacked and eliminated by Romantica. She is also beside Pram, as both manage to find each other since they appeared very close together, and they are searching everywhere for Desire. Romantica in this moment uses her wind magic to detect the people around her. She finds several and just decides to launch a new attack to finish off one of them. However, at this moment her attack completely dissipates, and 2 students appear who belong to the alpha class. They begin mocking Pram and Romantica, calling them trash. But the girl responds that she will show them who they really are. Romantica tells them not to be so confident just because they belong to the alpha class, and upon seeing the man not stop laughing, Pram launches himself at great speed, giving the student barely enough time to defend himself. Afterward, both sides prepare again for combat, and the students begin attacking Pram with a combined attack, but he starts running at great speed around them, causing the mage to feel frightened by the boy's speed. The student tries to hit Pram with a sword strike but misses, and tells his companion to finish off Romantica. However, she manages to detect them first and using wind magic lands a hit on the girl. Romantica tells her that creating a distraction is useless if her magic reveals her position in the end. This causes the student to get distracted, and just as Pram appears behind him, Romantica also readies an attack, and they end up eliminating the student together. Both celebrate with each other, but suddenly Romantica gets furious and realizes Desire had been watching them the whole time, so he comes out looking a little embarrassed and apologizes for spying on them. He also praises them for fighting excellently against the Alpha class students. At that moment, Romantica remembers that the attack she had launched toward the people she detected earlier had dissipated. So she realizes it was Desire who dispelled it, and thinks he has gotten much stronger and feels a little unsettled that he dispelled it without any problem. Desire, seeing the girl go quiet, ends up patting her on the head, but as expected she ends up getting furious. Desire also notices a storm approaching, so he knows something very bad is about to happen. We then see a group of Alpha students finishing off one of the other students, and a voice announces that only 18 people remain. Back with Desire, he explains that the only way to win would be to take control of the Shadow World domain or eliminate the rest of the opponents. However, there are still many rivals and they are trying to complete the domain. Most likely the Alpha students will join forces to come after them, so he recommends trying to survive until only 9 remain and qualify for the title. They just need to wait for the rest to start eliminating each other. Romantica gets very nervous, but Pram knows they will come out of this just fine. At this moment it begins to rain, so they run under a tree. Romantica begins thinking that if she were alone it would be impossible for her to make it into the top 9 among so many Alpha students, and finally wonders what would have happened if she had accepted Donta's proposal. Desire, seeing the girl is worried, calms her down, but she acts annoyed to hide her concern. Despite all of this, she thinks she loves being in Desire and Pram's group. Suddenly, all the students in the area begin hearing a bell. Desire tells them to remember the book about a tower called Previous, which has a magic artifact that begins summoning many monsters throughout the entire area. We then see a bolt come from the tower creating a large crack, and a monster appears, so everyone is assigned the mission of surviving against its attack. On another side, we see Pugman standing alongside the rest of the assembly teachers, thinking that the hour of reckoning has come for Desire's group. Brigitte also looks very worried about Desire and his group, knowing that very difficult things are coming. Back with Desire, he senses the monster approaching, and suddenly from the ground emerges a Kuldra rat. It begins summoning many more, so the group has no choice but to run. Desire explains that this creature uses its army of rats as extensions of itself, not to mention that it feeds on human blood. He also adds that once it locks onto a target, nothing will stop it until it completes its objective. Romantica at this moment tries to use her wind magic, but it has no effect, so after jumping over a tree she keeps running at full speed. Desire thinks of a plan, and after biting his finger, throws a little blood to identify the small demon. This gives Romantica the opportunity to attack, but the girl is not strong enough to finish it off in a single blow. Suddenly, we see Pram launch himself into the horde of monsters, and Desire begins to regret his decision. On another side, a Blue Moon team member is eliminated by the rat's attacks, and the others begin attacking the horde. Back with Desire, he is desperately trying to help Pram, who is inside the swirling mass of monsters trying to find its leader. However, at this moment a small explosion occurs, and the leader of the rats is sent flying and eliminated by a blow from Pram. And at that moment the survival mission is completed by them. Pram then falls asleep from exhaustion, so Desire carries him in his arms under a tree. They begin talking about how amazing and strong the boy is. Desire at this moment asks Romantica to keep watch over him as he needs to think alone for a moment. Right away, Desire begins blaming himself, as he cannot allow his companions to be put at risk like this, since he had become overconfident from the progress they had made and did not expect this kind of situation to repeat itself. His main objective is to prevent the deaths that happened in his past and to make his companions far stronger. He also spots the tower in that moment, so he goes back to his group and tells them they need to head toward it. In a parallel change of scene, we see Aegis' group arrives at the Previous Tower first. They think they will win the tournament if they manage to stop the clock inside. However, they suddenly sense an enemy presence and begin receiving impacts from the sky, causing them to try to block the attack, but several of them fall before it. Aegis very intelligently concludes that an attack of that magnitude could only come from someone like Desire. And she is right, as we are then shown Desire up in the tower thinking that fewer opponents remain. The group then continues attacking, and Aegis' group has no choice but to begin defending themselves. After receiving a barrage of hits, they manage to block the attacks using their magic shields. Desire tells his group it is normal that they would do that since they clearly have Aegis with them. Desire thinks that since defeating them will not be easy, he tells the girl they need to finish off other rivals first, who just then begin arriving. Romantica at that moment has a lot of doubt, but Desire tells her to trust him, so he launches 2 attacks and manages to eliminate both rivals, leaving only 13 participants remaining. Right away, Desire takes control of the tower using an ability, and simultaneously we see Blue Moon enter the place, but they are surprised to come face to face with other teams inside. Those teams begin telling them they were also attacked from outside. However, the other groups start blaming Aegis' group for those attacks, thinking the way they attacked their groups was quite underhanded. Aegis asks them if they have proof it was them doing the attacking. But the student tells her only they would know how to use spells of this higher level. Aegis at that moment realizes they would not be believed if they said it was the beta class students who were responsible, and understands in that moment that Desire's main objective is to make them all fight each other. At that moment, a student begins charging several fire abilities, and Aegis tells her group not to get involved, deciding to handle this herself. Right away, we see the fire mage launch the attack at the girl. However, she suddenly appears behind several of them, neutralizing them in just a couple of seconds. The student, very frightened, asks another group present for help, and they right away begin attacking Aegis, but she manages to block all the attacks and begins overwhelming the group. On another side, we see Desire's group waiting for the others to come up to them, and after a few seconds they arrive where Desire and his companions are. Desire tells them it is a shame they did not finish off the groups they were fighting, as it partly ruins the plan. Clearly, because the girl was much more clever and simply decided to neutralize the opponents, the atmosphere becomes a little tense, and each of them prepares to fight their counterpart. Finally, Aegis tells them that if they really think they deserve to win, they must prove it before them at this very moment. Right away, the girl uses an ice ability on herself and Desire to bring them up to the next floor and fight alone. Percival also launches himself at Pram, as he wants a rematch from the other day. And Donta stops Romantica, telling her that now no one will be able to interfere with their fight, not to mention telling her she has come further than he clearly expected. Back with Desire, he is found lying on the ground, and the girl tells him to stop pretending, as she knows what type of attacks would not do him any damage. Suddenly, Desire invokes a spell that launches a rock that then turns into a snake. But the girl using her ice spell manages to stop it in time. On another side, Desire uses his reversal spell and manages to take control of the entire room. Back with Pram, Percival begins mocking the boy about the other day. This gives Pram the motivation to begin dodging all of his attacks at great speed, causing Percival to start getting desperate, thinking Pram seems like a completely different person. Right away, the boy manages to land a blow to Percival's stomach, and Percival asks him how he has become so strong in such a short time. Pram mocks him by making faces at him and saying he does not care how he did it, which clearly causes Percival to get furious with him. On another side, we see Romantica launching several spells at Donta, but he blocks them very easily. Just then, a nearby crystal breaks, creating a cloud of dust that blocks the girl's view, which is perfect for Romantica, as using her location magic she begins firing spells. He is in shock, not understanding how Romantica knows the exact location. However, after several seconds, he figures out her strategy, and using his magic artifact clears all the dust from the area, causing the girl to be exposed, and he begins launching thrusts at her that she manages to dodge in time. The girl notices his artifact and begins telling him that despite despising commoners like her, he is ultimately the same as her since they are both human, and their only difference is their title. But as expected, the man does not want to hear her words and begins stating that alphas are far superior to all of them. So using his ring artifact, he manages to trap the girl inside a ring of fire, and finally blasts her with an explosion against the wall. Pram arrives to help her, but we see the man has a great deal of hatred inside him, as he mentions he plans to kill both of them. Pram tries to defend the girl, but he is trapped by the man's earth magic. Donta also launches himself at the girl to finish her off with a thrust. And just at that moment, Pram manages to break free from the stone trap and with his sword manages to knock away his amulet and cut him across the face. Despite this, Donta is still very angry and even tells his companion that both of the kids are now his prey. Romantica at this moment does not know what to do, as she knows she would only be a burden to her companion. So she asks Pram to take Percival to another location since Donta wants her, and she plans to fight him again herself. Despite Romantica's words, Pram refuses, as his expression shows he does not actually want them to do this. Pram at that moment recalls some words Desire had said, that none of the three of them should abandon their companions, not to mention that they have all become far stronger now. These words motivate the girl once again, and she declares it is time to finish off their rivals. Back with Desire, he tells Aegis that this time she does not plan to let him win as he did in the qualifying tournament. Without thinking twice, the girl launches a powerful ice spell at him, but it is neutralized by Desire's ability. She also tries to move around the room, but Desire stops her just the same. The girl is amazed, as she cannot believe all of her abilities can be reversed by him, so she attacks him again, but he counters by combining an ice and fire spell, encasing her in a kind of ice cocoon. However, despite this, the girl comes out completely unharmed, as she is clearly a very powerful fighter, so Desire with a very calm expression congratulates her on her great resilience. Aegis then cannot understand how Desire, despite being below her in stats, manages to neutralize every one of her attacks. Upon hearing Desire tell her they should keep having fun, she thinks she lacks much more combat experience, so without thinking twice she launches herself at him. Desire tells her he knew she would make that move, so the girl begins receiving force attacks from Desire, but manages to dodge each one of them before launching herself at him. However, as expected, the girl is shocked to see that he blocked her close-range attack as well. Despite Desire receiving a little damage from the girl, she still cannot believe he is far more powerful than her, so she asks him directly why she cannot beat him. Desire very cheerfully tells her he finds all of this very entertaining and asks if she has never had a truly worthy opponent in combat her whole life, and brings up a memory from before he was sent back in time where she also thought all opponents were extremely easy. And this is why Desire is entertained seeing her finally not behaving the way she did in the past. The girl tells him no matter how strong he is, she refuses to lose to him. So at this moment she uses vision magic and creates an entire ice temple throughout the entire area, leaving Desire very astonished, as he mentions he cannot use his reversal magic on this. Right away the girl begins attacking Desire using crystals that form around her. Desire also sees that dozens of spells are pointed at him. They begin firing at Desire, but he manages to nullify the magic of each one, causing the girl to get a little angry. Desire thinks he was already used to this type of magic from her, but finds it surprising she can use it at this point in time. The girl realizes she cannot beat him with her sword and cannot use magic since he will likely nullify it. So she decides to dispel the Ice Temple spell and prepares again with her sword. Back with the others, we see Donta and Pram exchange several blows and Pram lands a kick on him. This causes Donta to ask his companion for a hand, as he does not want to waste any more time. Despite Percival initially not wanting to since Donta had told him not to get involved, he ends up accepting the request. Without thinking twice, Percival launches himself at Pram and manages to throw his sword at him as a distraction, with Donta coming right behind both of them. Both of the kids find themselves cornered, and Romantica, recalling the strength Desire gives her, launches two powerful wind spells at the students. Back with Desire, we see him converting his sword into a magic one. Desire explains to us that this attack is the ability of magic knights, and normally such a powerful ability takes 10 years to master. But despite this, the girl is invoking it without any problem at all. Aegis launches herself at him, blocking all of Desire's attacks. However, we see that she manages to break through one of his dagger strikes and wounds him on his neck, or at least that is what she clearly thought. As Desire with a smile on his face manages to nullify her attack, and then shows her that he has control over the entire tower, as at that moment, Desire deactivates the tower's magic, thereby completing the mission of stopping the historical incident. And at that precise moment, the tournament is over. This causes the people watching on screen to be completely amazed to learn that Desire was the true winner, unlike Pugman, who is completely furious to see that a beta student won the tournament. After throwing his staff, he furiously thinks he will not accept this. A short while later, we see the assembly teachers gathered in conversation. Pugman begins insinuating that Brigitte gave Desire an illegal artifact, as he cannot believe he beat a magic knight. He even mentions that the girl leaked information about what would happen to Desire, but another teacher present tells him he has no way of proving this, as all of them fought legitimately and they all witnessed how he beat Aegis cleanly. Because the director grew tired of their arguing, he asks for a list of winners he himself had prepared, so one of them begins reading it, but the names are not revealed to us at this moment. A few hours later, we see Desire explaining the entire plan he carried out, but since the girl had figured it out, he praises her for her great intelligence. She also tells him she cannot understand how he managed to take control of the Shadow World domain, but Desire answers that they arrived first, and after analyzing the tower, he cast a spell on it. However, because he ran out of time due to Blue Moon's arrival, he confesses to her that he was not fighting her seriously the whole time, as while doing so he continued completing his deactivation spell on the tower. Suddenly the girl, with a smile on her face, says that since she met him she has fallen into every one of his traps, accepting in this way that she has been defeated by his great abilities. Both of them are interrupted when Pram and Romantica arrive. They become very defensive upon seeing Aegis talking with Desire. Desire begins praising his companions, and they are very touched because he is patting them on the head. This makes Aegis, seeing this, feel happy and get up, as she needs to leave since Pugman is calling her because of her defeat. Just as the girl is leaving, she asks one last favor of Desire, which is whether he will allow her to join his training group. Despite Romantica refusing this, Desire says yes and tells her he will be waiting to train together, and she leaves the place very happy. A short while later the group heads to Brigitte, and before clearly announcing the results she conjures a delicious cake from a very famous place, leaving Pram and Romantica completely fascinated. At that moment Brigitte plays a bad joke on them, telling them they were not approved. They are terrified for a few seconds, but right away the girl congratulates them, as all of them are now part of the Alpha class. After saying these words, the group begins celebrating over the delicious cake. Brigitte at this moment has a memory that is revealed to us, showing that when Desire was a child he came to her asking her to teach him to use magic, and for a long time she dedicated herself to doing so. Now she is proud of the person Desire has become. The next day we see the group decides to take the day off, as very soon they will have to attend the Alpha class and they know it will not be easy at all, so Desire gives them all the day off. Both Pram and Romantica get very excited, and we see they are at what appears to be a shopping center. Upon entering the place, we first see them visit a clothing store, where Romantica is the first to try on some outfits and she looks very beautiful. Since Desire is not very romantic at all, he tells her she looks very nice, and she tells him he is very bad at boosting someone's confidence. After saying these words, the girl changes again, and this time Desire's reaction is very different, which causes the girl to feel very delighted by his words, or at least that is what she thought, since Desire's words were actually directed at Pram, causing her to get angry instantly. Right away, Pram begins choosing a new tie for Desire, but Desire is not very happy about this at all. He even tries to signal to Romantica to help him, but the girl refuses completely. This means that when Pram gets very intense, there is nobody who can stop him. After a long time going through which tie suits him best, they finally leave, and Pram is very happy for having helped Desire. Right away they spot a shop that catches Pram's attention and also Romantica's, and they run toward the place. Desire at this moment is interrupted when he runs into Aegis there, and the girl mentions that sometimes it is nice to have a somewhat different routine, which is why she is there. Desire invites her to join them and she accepts, telling him it is a good opportunity to get revenge for the tournament. But Desire nervously tells her he does not want any of that, as he is only there to relax. However, the girl tells him it was a joke, and Desire thinks there is no way to tell when she is joking, as the girl's expression is quite serious at all times. On another side, we see Pram very focused on trying to get a stuffed animal from a claw machine. After managing it, Pram and Romantica are very happy, but are interrupted when Desire arrives together with Aegis. They clearly get upset and become guarded like angry little kittens. This causes Desire to take Pram and switch positions with him, suddenly changing Pram's perspective about Aegis entirely. Right away the group spots an air hockey table and heads straight toward it to play. Desire and Romantica end up on the same team, and he warns the girl they need to be very careful, as they are clearly up against the best swordsman and magic knight. Because Pram wants to win so he can play on Desire's team, he begins emanating a very surprising aura of motivation, and right away the game begins, becoming very intense as the players start blocking the puck at great speeds. In one sudden move, Romantica manages to land a shot that gives them a point. While emanating her wind magic, she tells them that their biggest mistake was challenging her, and Aegis understands this will be a game with magic involved. So after launching the puck, she manages to use her ice magic and score a point. This causes the two girls to get very competitive, and Desire recalls that this is how they all were when they were a group together. After several hours of playing, Aegis finally says goodbye to the group and thanks them for inviting her. After she leaves, Romantica is very happy, thinking she will not have to see her again. However, Desire reminds her that they will now be seeing her in the Alpha class, not to mention that she will be training with them. The next day, we see the group finally arrive at the Alpha class for the first time. They are completely amazed by its facilities compared to the Beta class. Desire then tells them it is time for training, so they head to the training area and Aegis also arrives. Over the next several hours the group trains, and Romantica does not seem very happy about the presence of this girl. But despite this, she puts on a demonstration with many balls, carrying them to the circle on the floor using her magic. And after a couple of hours, Aegis understands that Desire adapts the abilities and strengths of each of them for their training, so she says goodbye and mentions they will see each other later. On another side, Romantica is lying on the floor from how exhausting the training was. But Desire reminds himself that the next battle they will face is serious, and someone could even die, so he motivates himself to keep getting much stronger. A short while later the students go to class, and their teacher explains that every year they must fight against the Shadow World, and despite this they win in 99% of battles. All of this thanks to a mana crystal known as Altia, which appears every time they manage to defeat the Shadow World. However, despite possessing large amounts of mana, they cannot be used just like that, as 50 years ago they managed to create an artifact to extract its power, and it is thanks to this that today they have many tools that help them in their daily lives. The professor at that moment takes the opportunity to ask who was the person that created this artifact, and all the students end up pointing to Romantica, who is not feeling very well from the training. Desire, seeing the girl is very nervous, whispers the answer to her and tells her it was Zod Exarian, master of the Tower of Magic. The teacher, upon hearing her answer, tells her it is correct. And at that moment the bell rings and tells them class is over for today. Desire and his group head to Professor Prelude and ask if she can do them a favor. They head to another room to talk, and the woman thinks the students need study help. But Prelude mentions that all Academy students have the right to receive support from them and from the Tower of Magic. However, the time to request that type of help has already passed. Desire responds that it has nothing to do with that, and shows her a letter with a request to assign his group to protect the Magic Tower of Urareli. Despite Desire's pleading, the girl tells him she cannot do it, as in the first place there are no grounds to stop or protect that tower. Desire tells her that inside the tower is kept the Tear of Regemmel, a magic stone. This leaves the teacher speechless upon seeing that Desire possesses confidential Academy information. Prelude asks him how he knows this, and Desire only tells her that within 10 hours a group will attempt to steal it, and mentions that the ones responsible will be a group called the Outsiders. This leaves the woman in shock, as she knows they are a group dedicated to stealing magic stones. She also questions how they can know so much information coming from the Beta class. Finally, Desire tells her he does not have time to explain all of this, but he knows they have a limited window to protect the stone, so he emphasizes once again that only she can request that they be the ones responsible for protecting the Tear. 10 hours later, we see Zod waiting when an ally arrives at full speed saying they are under attack. This causes Zod to look at Desire's profile photo and wonder who this person really is, as it is not normal for him to know all of this information. In a change of scene, we see Desire disguised as a poor farmer running at full speed carrying a bag of bread. He bumps into a mysterious man who uses a magic ability to hold and take the bag from Desire. He also helps him up and tells him he must be very careful walking these streets at night, as there could be bad people around like himself, and at that moment throws the bread to the ground and begins stepping on it. Desire acts surprised and tells him that bread was for his family. The man then leaves the place, and we see that beside him appears an invisible being who asks if he wants him to eliminate the boy. However, the man says no, and we see them both looking up at the magic tower high in the mountains. On another side, we see Desire smiling with satisfaction, as the man has apparently fallen into a trap. The man then arrives at the location, and after removing his hat puts on a mask, and suddenly an army begins to appear. They begin invoking spells and attack the place. But as expected, a protective barrier disintegrates every single one of the attacks, as we discover this is the assault Desire had predicted would happen. We also meet the masked man by the name of Kraken. Kraken mentions it was to be expected that a great defense would be waiting for them. However, we see dozens of warriors beginning to advance to attack the tower, and Kraken thinks there is no way they can defend against two types of magic at the same time. So after a long period of attacking, they manage to break through the barrier and infiltrate the place. They are of course received by the tower's knights, who immediately begin attacking the intruders. So the intruders begin defending with their magic shields, and Kraken takes advantage and with several soldiers infiltrates using an invisibility ability. However, while walking through the facilities, he realizes the knights were already on alert for their attack. They then reach the door where the stone is kept, and after entering, several of the soldiers try to break the barrier, but unable to do so, Kraken personally approaches and with a powerful spell manages to destroy the barrier. He is very astonished upon encountering the high-ranking magic stone known as the Tear of Regemmel. Just before Kraken takes the stone, Pram appears at that moment and warns him he had better stop. The man ignores him and after taking the stone asks how they knew about them, but since Pram refuses to answer, they begin attacking him. However, the boy is far more skilled and manages to dodge and block every one of the intruders' attacks. He also counterattacks, finishing off one of the men, but Kraken right away uses magic lassos to then hit him with an earth ability. Kraken praises the boy for his great ability and speed. However, he emphasizes that he still lacks a lot of combat experience. So at that moment, Kraken invokes magic chains that begin chasing the boy, cornering him against some walls he creates in that moment. Right away, his companions launch several spells at Pram, but they are blocked by Romantica's wind magic. The girl also begins attacking from above and manages to take down several of them. Kraken realizes that despite the magic not being powerful enough to pierce through their armor, it is quite precise, not to mention it conjures several spells at once, making him think there are many mages attacking them. This causes him to start getting nervous since he did not expect to be waited for, but he thinks he cannot lose focus on his objective of stealing the tear. Suddenly, Kraken asks his allies to cover him and begins generating a kind of aura around himself. Pram, without thinking twice, launches himself to try to stop him, but is blocked by one of his subordinates. Kraken also begins launching rubble from the area using his magic, not to mention he ends up sinking the floor and taking out even one of his own allies. Pram, after dodging the attack, asks how it is possible he attacks his own allies, but the man coldly tells him all his subordinates are completely replaceable. This angers Pram, who launches himself at the man, but he immediately blocks it using a rock to counterattack and hit the boy. Kraken also begins gathering many stones around his body, creating a kind of reinforced armor. Pram tries to break through the armor but finds it completely useless. He also tells him to try a new attack, as Pram always uses the same one. Kraken also manages to locate where Romantica was hiding, so after discovering the pillar she was hiding behind, she is forced out into the open. The man asks who sent them after him, as not just anyone would know about his invasion. Since the kids refuse to give him the information, he attacks them, but Pram manages to defend her in time. Romantica, seeing how insufferable the man is, decides to use her wind magic to throw some rocks at him. But the man blocks the attack just the same and right away activates an ability called Earthen Wrath, which creates a massive explosion throughout the entire area. Right after seeing the kids are no longer visible, he leaves through the gigantic crater he made in the floor. We then see the kids have survived, and Romantica notes they were defeated by the man. So both of them feel motivated and think they need to keep training to become far stronger. Pram also wonders whether Desire had sent them there specifically to give them this motivation after the fight. In a parallel scene, we see Kraken walking through an underground tunnel. He thinks that despite Zod knowing all of his moves, he came out victorious in the end, as he managed to steal the magic stone. However, at this moment he is interrupted when Desire appears before him. Desire jokingly tells him he needs to pay for the bread he stepped on, but Kraken asks him how he knew he was there. Desire right away activates one of his spells and tells him that when he helped him up, he left a magic trace on his hand. Kraken, upon hearing this, begins laughing like a madman, as he thinks Desire is a genius for someone so young, so he tells him he will not forgive him for interfering in his plans and begins charging a powerful spell against Desire. But just before it connects, Desire neutralizes it using his reversal magic. The man is left speechless, and Desire tells him he needs to return what he just stole. In response, Kraken begins performing several attacks against him, but all of them are blocked by his reversal magic. Upon realizing the powerful magic Desire possesses, Kraken invokes dozens of spells with giant rocks to attack him, but they are all neutralized very easily by Desire as well. Desire then begins approaching the man, and the man threatens to destroy the tier. However, Desire furiously tells him he can do whatever he wants, so he launches himself at the man to strike him. Kraken also tries to respond with a blow, but right away Desire uses a gravity spell, slamming him to the ground and leaving the man stunned, who cannot believe anyone in this world possesses an ability of such a high rank. Desire then recovers the tier by using the mana from the stone itself, leaving Kraken even more astonished. As if you remember, the only way to extract the mana from the tier is through an artifact, yet Desire is doing it using his own abilities. Finally, Desire begins pressing the man into the ground with his gravity magic, but we see Kraken activates his masks. Right away Kraken appears to evolve, and Desire tells him he looks like a kind of magical beast. The man furiously tells him yes, that is exactly what he is, and right away begins landing multiple powerful blows on Desire. Desire then manages to dodge several of his strikes and tries to finish him off with a fire spell. However, it does no damage at all, and Kraken uses his earth magic to hit Desire, also telling him that no spell at this level could affect him. The man then begins invoking many spells, and before Desire can neutralize them, they all close in to strike him. But he barely manages to escape the incoming barrage. This makes Kraken angry, so he begins invoking what appears to be a massive magical hammer, which Desire tries to reverse. However, the man forces it through and completes it in time, then without hesitation tells Desire that his moment of death has arrived. He launches everything he has, and Desire manages to create multiple layered shields to defend himself. And just at this moment, a massive explosion occurs as Kraken unleashes his maximum power. When the attack ends, the man begins to laugh thinking he has beaten Desire, but right away his hammer begins to crumble and Desire appears before him as if nothing had happened to him at all. Confident in himself, Desire tells him that he deduced the unusual nature of his magic spell and took the time needed to fully reverse it. Right away, Desire begins using his reversal magic on the transformation Kraken had undergone. This causes him to receive massive damage, and the man tries to launch himself at Desire, but Desire, using the mana from the tier, creates a powerful energy sphere which he launches and impacts against Kraken, causing the armor he had obtained to shatter completely to pieces. As his final words, the man asks who the hell Desire is, as he had never met anyone in this world with so many high-ranking abilities. Desire at this moment begins reflecting on who he truly is, but his thoughts are interrupted when his friends arrive. They embrace him joyfully upon seeing he is safe. Several hours later, we see Desire together with Romantica at the Tower of Magic headquarters. They head to see Zod, as Desire, as a reward for having protected the magic stone, wanted to play chess with Zod. They arrive at the door, and Romantica tells him she will wait outside. Zod welcomes him in, and Desire recalls him as one of his most loyal companions, also noting that in the future he will become the most powerful mage in the world. Even though Desire has known him for a long time from his previous life, he tells Zod he feels a little nervous meeting him. They begin preparing, and Desire thanks him for taking the time to be with him. Desire tells him he would like to play in the herbal mode, which is a very unusual style of play, leaving Zod surprised. But Desire, to avoid raising suspicion, tells him an old friend of his taught it to him, all without knowing that in Desire's future it was Zod himself who taught him. After playing for a while, Desire tells him they should bet something so the winner clearly has something to gain. Zod, a little pessimistically, tells him there is nothing a student like him could offer. Desire in response points to some magic stones that Zod has been unable to process up to this date. So Desire, after borrowing one, infuses a little of his sacred mana into it and manages to activate the magic stone, leaving Zod completely fascinated. Zod asks him how he did that, and Desire tells him they should bet the answer, leaving him very pleased with the arrangement. In a change of scene, we see Aegis on the balcony of a mansion, as the Blue Moon group appears to be holding a party. Pugman at that moment arrives with the girl and tells her they should go encourage the others, as since the girl's defeat rumors have been circulating about them. But Aegis responds that she does not care what people think, as she does not like lying to people and she lost fairly. Pugman begins telling her she was the one to blame for all of this, so without thinking twice he tells her she is no longer part of the Blue Moon group. The girl with a smile on her face thinks that Desire's group will clearly accept her, and throws the brooch that identified her as a Blue Moon member before leaving the place. In a change of scene, we see Desire's group gathered together discussing what happened with Kraken. Pram speaks directly and asks Desire why he is so determined to turn them all into powerful people. Desire honestly tells them that within 13 days a shadow world is going to activate and they will be sent to take care of it. It is nothing like the simulations conducted at the Academy, and if they fail, the world could be in danger and everyone could die. So with the memory of what the dragon once did fresh in his mind, he tells them he will not allow any of that to happen again. Romantica tells him she believes everything he is saying, as he had not been wrong about anything since the Tower of Magic incident. However, she asks him to be honest and tell them who he really is, since he is ranked at the weakest level but is powerful and knows so much. Desire, after thinking for a few seconds, thinks he needs to tell them the truth. But just as he was about to do so, Romantica herself stops him and tells him she wants to find out herself, as she mentioned a long time ago that she would uncover his hidden secret. This makes Desire feel much better, as he does not need to tell them anything since they trust him. Finally, he tells them that just like them, he also needs to become far stronger. And in the days that follow, we see the group dedicates itself to training hard. And one day when Desire is with Aegist, she slips on a paper and ends up falling into a very compromising position with him. This creates a very tense situation between both of them, and the girl simply tells him he can count on her. And that is where the anime ends. If you made it this far, drop a comment and let me know what you thought. Do not forget to leave a like, it helps the channel more than you think. Subscribe to Hakai Realm and hit the bell so you never miss a recap. Until next time.